Our next guest is the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee and expected to be part of that classified briefing this afternoon. Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington State joins us now. Congressman, thank you for being here. What are you going to ask in that briefing this afternoon?
Well, I think the biggest question is what are the objectives that we're trying to achieve, and what are the means to achieve those objectives? And the administration's not been clear on that point. President Trump has talked about regime change. He's talked about empowering the protesters in Iran. He's talked about the nuclear program, the missile program in Iran. What is the objective? I mean, they keep saying we're making progress towards our objectives. We need to know specifically what those objectives are, and then what's the military plan for achieving them? How do we get there? I think those are the two biggest areas of question. Obviously, there's a lot of details that flow down from that. And then, yes, on the legality side of it, any justification they have for this being imminent, we'd love to see it. It sounds to me like they don't even really believe that there was an imminent threat. And then the questions about the nuclear program. And we've had these questions since Midnight Hammer last year. Okay, you say you obliterated it. What are the details? We have never been given the details of where they think the Iranian nuclear program is at this point.
Right. The president has addressed the American people in a couple of social media posts, no live address at this point. And he's at least explained the rationale for these strikes by saying this is about taking out a regime before it can be armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons, which would threaten every American. Is that justification enough to attack Iran now?
Clearly not. I mean, there are a lot of countries in the world that have missiles. Well, gosh, Iran did not have missiles capable of attacking America. In best assessments, they were years, if not decades, away from having that capability. But there are countries that have weapons that are capable of hitting the U.S. Just because they have that capability doesn't mean that we have the right to go in and start a war. And there wasn't really any evidence that I've seen that Iran was planning on attacking Americans or American interests. So again, I think even the administration has a hard time saying the imminent threat thing with a straight face. I mean, their real objective here was to go after a weakened Iran. Iran is unquestionably a major problem in the world and in the Middle East specifically. They saw Iran as weak. They figured they could go in and weaken them further. And I think the real goal here, which would really help if President Trump and Secretary Hegseth just said this out loud, is not really so much changing the regime fundamentally, but whoever now winds up in charge of Iran, Trump wants them basically to have been bludgeoned to the point where they will not dare oppose us. That's the plan. The problem with that is, well, who are these people? Who is going to wind up running Iran? And how do we enforce that threat going forward?
And American lives and others are on the line right now already. At least 4 U.S. service members have been killed since this conflict began.
Yeah, that's the third thing that I should have mentioned. And even before you get to that point, we have the largest war in the Middle East that we've seen in decades. President Trump has kicked off a war in the Middle East involving, gosh, up to like 10 different countries now. Hezbollah is back at war with Israel. People are dying. There's major damage being done across the region in the hope that on the back end of this, we get a more pliable Iran. That's an enormous risk to take.
The president says more casualties are likely. Here's part of what we heard.
We pray for the full recovery of the wounded and send our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case. But America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most punishing blow to the terrorists who have waged war against basically civilization.
Congressman, just hearing those words from the president and how he delivered them, what do you think is the message sent to U.S. service members and their families?
Well, I don't think he's offered an adequate explanation.
As we continue to cover the breaking news, among the many questions this morning following the Iran strikes revolve around the White House argument that President Trump decided to launch the attacks in part because Iran might have been looking to strike U.S. forces in the Middle East, quote, perhaps preemptively. But as Reuters reports, Trump administration officials acknowledged in closed-door briefings with congressional staff on Sunday that there was no intelligence suggesting Iran planned to attack U.S. forces first. Two people familiar with the matter said. Sunday's remarks to Congress appeared to undercut one of the key arguments for the war made by senior administration officials. Joining us now, Independent Senator Angus King of Maine. He's a member of the Armed Services Committee and Select Committee on Intelligence. Senator, where do you stand on whether or not the president should have acted alone? And also in terms of working with Congress on this, where do you stand on the War Powers Resolution?
Well, certainly I'm going to vote for the War Powers Resolution because I think that's necessary. As I've followed the news over the weekend and been in touch with colleagues, it's boiled down to me to three very simple questions. Why now? Why not? And what's next? Why now? You just touched upon, and I'll echo what Jason Crow just said as a member of Armed Services and Intelligence. I have seen no intelligence that the Iranians are close to a bomb, or B, that they were planning any kind of attack. So one of the things I'm going to be looking for in these briefings is why now? What provoked this? Because the argument that there was going to be a preemptive attack or they were weeks away from a bomb, that appears to be completely untrue. The second question is why not? And what I mean by that is why not go to the American people and the Congress in order to discuss, understand, identify the risks, because the decision to take our country into war is probably the most important decision that can be made. And the people that wrote our Constitution realized that, and that's why they gave it to the Congress, the people's representatives, so there would be debate and discussion, not the decision in just one hand. In August of 1787, Roger Sherman of Connecticut in the constitutional debate said, it's not a republic if the monarch, if the chief magistrate, that's what they call the president, can single-handedly decide to go to war. And so this idea that you have to go to Congress is not because my feelings are hurt because I haven't been consulted. It's because this is an essential safeguard to how our country's supposed to work. And then the third question, which we can discuss, is what's next? Because they're not going to be able to achieve true regime change and do something for the people of Iran, which I'm totally sympathetic with from the air. I think you've had General Hertling on. No military official will tell you you can fundamentally change the form of government in a country with just airstrikes.
And so,
Lemire?
Senator,
I'm sorry, I guess there we go. Go ahead, Jonathan.
There we go. Yeah, Senator, thank you for being with us this morning. We know that we're going to hear from we're seeing in the bottom corner of our screen here, the Pentagon officials are going to be making remarks shortly with a briefing as to where things stand. We have yet to get any sort of real coherent message from the president. He's taken some reporters' phone calls. He's put up a couple of videos on Truth Social, but no Oval Office address, nothing like that. What are you hearing from your constituents, people you're talking to? Because the arguments I keep hearing the last 40 hours or so, though, of course, no one's going to miss this regime. No one's going to miss the supreme leader. But there's yet to be a case made as to why this conflict is in the interest of the American people and why American service members are being asked to, in some cases, make the ultimate sacrifice. We have 4 killed already. The president has said that number will grow.
Well, I checked last night about what the calls were that were coming into our offices over the weekend, and by and large, they were fearful. There were people that didn't understand what was going on and why. And
from the military front, I think what we know is the question, what are the political objectives? They need to be equally defined. Wars don't end with target lists, right? They end with political outcomes, and that absolutely is the question we don't have defined.
And Wendy, what happens to the nuclear material that is there now? Who's in control of that?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's one that international actors and others should be considering and working with. You know, I will say that our intelligence community, having talked with several of them this morning, for example, you know, not about classified information, of course, but hearing what they're focused on, that is something, obviously, that is of intense focus. Our military service members and our intel community deserve a lot of credit for executing the mission so far. as skillfully as they have. They're operating with amazing skill, precision, and deserve our support. But I do think that question is one that we're going to need to be asking very direct questions of the president. Hopefully folks will when he speaks shortly.
President Trump addressed the Iranian people, and you mentioned this, David. He said, quote, Iran will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. But what do you think? Is that kind of a power shift possible under these circumstances?
I wrote a story about this, and it's the headline is The Trump Doctrine, the rest will be up to you. And that's what he said yesterday in his taped remarks. And so I spoke to former intelligence officials, and they're worried that we're not doing enough to help the Iranian people, that there's a way to have assets in there who are possibly urging members of the military, units of the military, to shift over to the opposition side or bluntly paying them to do so. Maybe there's elements in the IRGC even that are unhappy and they could be shifted over, or police units. And what's so concerning is that in the remarks, if we hear from the president and from Secretary Hegseth, they just don't mention that, and they kind of lay it all on the laps of unarmed Iranian civilians. A simple, pragmatic thing would be to try to also end this blockade of the internet that's preventing Iranians from even talking to each other. That would help protesters take to the streets. Right now, 96% of the internet.
Critics argue that Donald Trump's war is illegal and that it puts ordinary people, the 99%, at risk in both the United States and Iran. They say it's not billionaires of Wall Street sites who face the danger. It's regular families on both sides of the conflict. In the early stages alone, lives have already been lost. Americans have died. Iranians, including innocent civilians and children, have also killed in the strikes carried out by U.S. forces. There have even been reports of friendly fire incidents. As Commander-in-Chief, Trump is ultimately responsible for military decisions. In one reported incident, U.S. aircraft were mistakenly targeted, and while early coverage, including reporting from the BBC, indicated that the pilots safely ejected and survived, the situation highlighted how quickly things can spiral. Even without confirmed fatalities, in that case, critics argued the risk to American troops was real. Beyond direct casualties, the broader concern is who bears the cost of escalation. American service members stationed near Iran face heightened danger. Civilians in Iran face ongoing instability, and people in allied countries hosting U.S. military bases could also become targets. If retaliation spreads in conflicts like this, each side responds to the other, and escalation can become a cycle. Opponents of the war believe it was launched amid domestic political pressure and poor polling, and that it shifts attention away from internet controversies, but instead of solving problems at home. They argue it increases global instability, endangers service members, and risks the lives of civilians on all sides.